It's always fun to get up for a rival. The Raiders are certainly that, and they are going to get them the day after Thanksgiving. What does this game look like, and how the Chiefs get the sweep against the Raiders? Coming up next on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, folks. It is your game preview, not a Red Friday, but a Red Thursday. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. We appreciate you joining us on your holiday and hope that you're having a great one. We're brought to you by Game Time. If you want to get some special seats there on the day after, you can go and do whatever you can. Get to Game Time. Check it out. No matter what you're trying to get done, you can find it on Game Time with our code Locked On. Create your account. Use that code Locked On NFL, and you can get $20 off of your first purchase. This is a fun one. Always a good time against the Raiders. Let's hope that they have everything squared away on what is a very, very strange holiday. Black Friday game. I don't know if that plays into the Raiders' hands, given that it's one of their colors. I doubt it. We're going to take you through all of it, though, including our predictions and the X factors they have to watch for. That's coming up later in the show. We're going to get to the must-win matchups, the one-on-ones, the way that it has to go for the Chiefs to pull off this win and actually seal the deal. And then we're going to start with new additions. What's coming, what isn't, when we get after it. This is Chris Clark. I'm Ryan Tracy. You can find Chris over at KC Chiefs Corner. You can find me at NFL33.com and RGRfootball.com. Make sure that you check those out and get subbed over there on the Substacks. Like, sub, hit the bell here, and do all the things on YouTube and the audio platforms because we're free every single day for you. And if you want that much more, you want breaking news, get on the text line. All of our locos hang out there. Our everyday listeners, we appreciate you guys. 816-357-8781. This has been a long time coming. And according to Andy Reid, on what looked like a very cold practice day on Wednesday, was able to get a little bit of an opinion on what's going on with the big three names. And that is DJ Humphries, Charles Omenihu, and Isaiah Pacheco. Now, on the two returners, don't have confirmation yet. We expect that they should be re-signed and reactivated, available for this game against the Raiders. What happens after that is a question mark. Now, it hasn't happened yet. I don't know that it's 1,000%, but it does feel pretty likely to me at this point. How about you?
I'd say it's likely because they actually open up the roster spots at this point. Peyton Hershey got moved to IR, and Cam Thomas got released. And I didn't see Cam Thomas get added back to the practice squad, which is kind of interesting. So I'm curious to see if that happens in the coming days. Hate to see Hendershot go. I'm not going to say that he brought a lot to the Chiefs, but he did bring juice. He did bring a little bit of energy, and they have really gotten hammered at that position. They're down to their, sixth tight end if they bring somebody up in the practice squad this season. And that's after being down to your lower level wide receivers too, and then bringing in DeAndre Hopkins. So lots of different things going on there. And Matt Schrader's out too. It sounds like they're going to have Matt Wright and a new kicker this week, which it's just all the injuries. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it certainly piles up this time of year, and especially when it starts to get cold. If you're playing outdoor games, it's just more likely that you're going to have some soft tissue stuff. I will say this: I won't necessarily expect right yet. We'll see. I felt like Andy's answer was a little bit, we're going to play it by ear. Maybe not a direct answer to that. So they could go either way. That's good to know. I do feel like it is in the air that Pacheco should be back, Omenihu should be back. But I think that means very different things for those two guys in this ball game. I do feel like if Isaiah Pacheco is back on the roster, taken off the IR, everything's great, I think he should get a couple of touches. My guess is he's been kind of raring to go, to tell you the truth. I'm a little more comfortable with that than I am with Charles Omenihu jumping back into the fray. I'd like to just kind of hold on to that because I do feel the defensive front is a little bit more fragile. And we've been talking a long time about what he does to boost it when he comes back. I want to be a little more careful with that if I'm inside the building. Do you think that they should just throw him back in, or where do you stand?
No, I'd be good with that. I think that they ought to try to bring him along. I don't think that they need to get him super involved early on. I do think that it would be great to get him maybe 10 snaps, maybe 15. Really depends on how the game goes, honestly. Reality is you could maybe just use him and get him out there for a couple of pass rush snaps. If you get some 3rd and longs, put him out there, have him break down inside and see what you can do there. I still think that they need to try to get O'Shea involved more in this defense as well. So I do think that that's important to try to get that taken care of. And I like what you said about Pacheco. I do think that they ought to use him and they ought to get him a lot more touches than just a couple here and there, because I do think that he is probably ready and raring to go. And it's even more important considering it's a short week and Hunt has been beat up on a regular basis. Yeah. He needs a little bit more rest, and the extra time off after this game will help, but give Pacheco a couple more carries. I wonder if we see Clyde, considering they're not likely to have a 3rd tight end this week. Are they going to have that many running backs up and be able to just kind of move the ball around and do different things? I'm really curious to see what they do there.
Now, while that's one case to deal with 2 guys that are coming back, obviously Menhu's been out quite a while. It's a very different thing to bring in and activate someone like DJ Humphries, who was out at practice. If you guys missed my discussion with Matt the other day, go ahead and check that out, as well as getting with Chris the conversation with Q over from the Raiders. Make sure you go back and listen to both of those, because I feel like they have to ride with what they have right now. I know, especially the specter that is Max Crosby. We're going to talk about him after the break here in a bit. It makes you want to push somebody with experience into the role, because that's the thing that both the Chiefs left tackles are missing right now. Significant experience, although I will say Juan is coming along. He's seen a lot of faces now. Now, if he can buckle down and get a couple of things ironed out, I think especially as long as he can keep from lunging against Max, I think that will help. I think right now, is even if DJ Humphries, and he said he looked like he was in pretty good shape, and that he's kept himself going pretty well. That's great to hear. But I am not going to rush him into playing snaps, especially against Max in a game that, quite frankly, beyond the first quarter, shouldn't be that tight. So I think they ride with Wanya, give him help. I hope some considered help, like we talked earlier in the week about, like a 6th offensive lineman. How do you think that it goes, and what would you do?
For me, and I think you and I talked about this earlier in the week, for me, what I would do is I would give him, I don't know however many special team snap they have on field goals, just to get him out there and get him some reps of being out on the field. And that's really few and far between. So it's not like you're taking 5 or 6 snaps in a row. You're taking 1 snap. You're hitting somebody. You're coming off the field, getting a little bit of rest. You at least get that, the energy of being in a game a little bit. I would use him in that role. I would put him in there as like a lineman on the, on extra points or field goals. And then next week, maybe you get him in and you bring him in, or maybe you even use him as an extra lineman a couple of plays. I'd be okay with that. But you don't put him out there to start. I don't think that that's ever been a thought. And I don't think it ever would have been a thought, even if it was a Sunday game. I don't think that it's enough time for him to come from being injured and not even on the roster to knowing enough of the playbook, one, because you do have to know the playbook as an offensive lineman, regardless of what people think, that is something you have to figure out. And 2, you don't want to put him in a situation where he has not really had any kind of hitting all season long, and you're going to put him out there to go against one of the best defensive ends in the NFL. And I know Crosby doesn't generally play on that side, but I guarantee you if Humphrey was a starter there, they'd put Crosby over there just to test him, because that's not a great situation to put a guy in.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's very likely. And unfortunately, that's the thing that they have to deal with right now. What's in front of them is Max Crosby and the group that he leads. Other guys will contribute, and we'll talk about them. But Max is probably job number 1. We're going to get him right after this. The atmosphere at Arrowhead is unique. There's nothing like it. Nowhere more in the world that you want to watch a ball game than right there from those seats. Finding those seats is always interesting. It makes it super easy to use Game Time. It's all in pricing, so you never get hit with anything strange. You don't get surprised at checkout. You get to see the view from every seat in the stadium, so you know exactly what that ball game is going to look like when you're sitting there. And they offer the lowest price guarantee. You find it cheaper somewhere else, they'll give you 110% of the difference right there on the spot. All you got to do is get the Game Time app. So go download it, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL You'll get $20 off of your first purchase. Again, all you got to do is create an account and use the code. It's LOCKEDON NFL, and you get $20 off. Go down that Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. Now, there's a lot of history here in this contest. And obviously, bad blood runs between these two teams. Nothing's probably more important than stopping Max Crosby. Now, a lot of folks are going to tell you, oh, that's not that hard to do. He's been on a bad roll. He hasn't gotten a sack in, 4 or 5 games at this point. And while he is continuing to generate pressure, much like Chris Jones is for the Chiefs, just not getting home. I don't want to get anyone lulled into a false sense of security because the guy can turn it on, and especially against a younger tackle, this is obviously the primary thing to do in this ballgame is to deal with wherever he lines up. I don't think they're going to flip him to Juwan's side. I think they're going to leave him on the right side of their defense, attacking the left tackle. And I think you just have to make multiple plans for sending wave after wave of help towards Max Crosby.
I'll be interested to see if they do that because they generally have kept him on the right tackle side, but I'm curious to see what they do in this game. And the one thing I will say about Crosby is while he is one of the best defensive ends in the NFL, I think he's a fantastic player. If I had to choose anybody in the division to add to the Chiefs team, it would be Max Crosby. I think he's probably the best player outside of this team that I would want on this roster because it's a huge position and need for Kansas City to have that kind of guy. But the other thing is he is fierce. He's a huge competitor, and he is going to want to get after Mahomes. He's going to have even more juice than he normally does for any other type of game. This is a huge game for him because he likes going up against Mahomes. And it's not like these two teams don't like each other. That's true. But there is a ton of respect between Mahomes and between Crosby. You see it after the games. Yeah, they get after it during the games. It's the competitive nature of the NFL and football. But it's a huge matchup, and you cannot get around Max Crosby in this situation. So I think that's a big one. Really, the biggest one to me, and this is really what it's going to come down to for me, is can Kansas City show that they have the ability to take away Brock Bowers? And I'm not saying that they have to completely stop him, but if you go back to the last time they played the Raiders, Brock Bowers, I think, had 4 or 5 catches in the first couple of series and then disappeared for 2.5 quarters. Then came back in the fourth quarter and started being active again. What did they is it they did something different, or did Vegas just go away from him? They have to be able to contain Brock Bowers. Aiden O'Connell's coming back, is going to start for this game. He's coming back off an injury, hasn't played in 5 games. That's a big issue for them. They've got to be able to run the ball, and I get all that. But the offense is going to go through their best player, and that is Brock Bowers.
It certainly is. And he was a perfect 5 for 5 for 58 yards last time. So I completely get where you're coming from. And here's the scary part. That was his 6th game as a professional. He's got more mileage. He's got more experience. I know it has been super long between these 2 games. A lot tighter scheduling than most years. But he certainly is where that thing flows. I also think you hit the nail on the head. The thing that is most important is the quarterback for Las Vegas, because coming back in, especially coming off of the injury, not having a stellar performance before that. In fact, the Chiefs played Minshew last time. So he hasn't even seen the Chiefs this season. That's a tough predicament. And as much as Max Crosby has been struggling getting home, the Chiefs have been too. Even Chris Jones has a longer streak of not getting a sack than Max Crosby.
7 games.
This is the differential for me. You have to be able to show that you can get home. And it kind of plays into Spag's desires. Last week, Bryce Young, give him credit, he was very good at understanding where the hot route had to be based on the blitz. That's not something that I think they're going to be able to rely on with Aiden O'Connell. Not just because I don't think he's necessarily up to snuff there, but also because he's been pressured on over like 50% of his dropbacks so far this season. And that's incredible. The Chiefs have to dial that up, especially when blitzed. So what they have to do is kind of play right into Spag's concept and that is get after him from multiple angles in multiple ways. I hope they don't put in the cover zero looks that ate them up last week, especially against Bowers, but you do have to go attack and blitz O'Connell.
I'm going to be really curious because if I remember correctly, O'Connell's the guy that started last year in the game on Christmas. And if I remember correctly, I don't think he completed a pass after the first half. Chiefs still lost that game. That's the horrible part. They still lost, and he played bad in that game. He was not able to get anything done, but they were able to run the ball. That's a little bit different this year. I don't think that that's going to be an issue. I think Kansas City's run defense has shown that they are consistent and they can stop the running game, and I think that is going to be a huge key in this game. Is I think Spags is going to look at this and say, okay, O'Connell, you have to be the one to beat us because we're not going to give your running game any kind of leverage, and we're going to attack the running game. And if they do that and they be consistent like they have been, keep a running game to 50, 60 yards, it's not going to hurt you. So I do think that, stopping the running game is going to help stop O'Connell, because I also think that when you look at it and you get them into 3rd and 6s, 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, that's when you can bring in a guy like a Minihue, like we talked about, give him a little bit of extra rush on the interior, and decide, okay, you have Uche on one defensive end. Who's going to be your other defensive end? Is it going to be Chris Jones? Is it going to be George Karlaftis? How are you going to rush in that situation and try to get a Minihue involved in that, because you can use him in a limited capacity and get him just enough snaps to kind of get his feet wet and get ready for a bigger game, a bigger role in the next couple of weeks, much like you're going to basically be getting Pacheco ready for a bigger role in the next couple of weeks as well. And any more guys that they're going to be adding down the stretch when they come back from injury.
I did go back and pull up those stats from last year. O'Connell completed 9 passes on the day. The day.
It was bad.
The Chiefs the Chiefs outgained them 205 to 308. Like, it was not close. The difference, and this is probably the thing that has to be most maintained, and that I do feel that they're in a better position this year going into this game than they were last year. Patrick turned the ball over with an interception last year, as did Pacheco. And that's what it comes down to, because a team like that who can't throw the ball, and the Chiefs are better against the run than they have been even last season, you have to be able to control the turnovers. The only thing you can do is hurt yourself in this point. So the last thing that's a critical matchup win for me is not giving the ball away.
You mean don't let them score 2 touchdowns in 8 seconds like they did last year? Because pretty sure that's what happened last year. I mean, they had it was a fumble recovery for a touchdown. Yeah, it was a fumble recovery by Pacheco, I think, for a touchdown, and then kickoff, and then Mahomes threw a pick six the very first play. Can't do that. You do that, any team in the NFL can beat you. It doesn't matter. And Antonio Pierce came out and said that the Raiders are considered the worst team in the NFL right now. Even the Raiders, who are the worst team in the NFL, will beat you if you give them 14 points like that.
Sure. Yeah. It was a 14-20 game. That's what it was. That tells you all you need to know. So you have to make sure that you're preparing yourself to not do what you know has bit you before, especially in this kind of situation where they're only here to play spoiler. That's all they care about. This is their Super Bowl. This is the last thing that they care about this season, and you got to shut it down. But there's always X factors. There's always something can jump up and bite you. So what could they be? Who do we have to watch out for, and what is going to happen? It's coming up next. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, you can bet just $5 and you get $150 back in bonus bets if you win right now. FanDuel Sportsbook, the app, gives you everything that you need to get bets in place for the NFL all in one place. So when you got a hunch in the middle of the game, you want to check out the latest stats, you live by that play-by-play, you can do that and much more in the same page right where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com today and join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 and official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You were saying before you left, this is the Raiders Super Bowl. And when I was talking to Q on the crossover episode, I said that specifically. This is their Super Bowl. The reality is when you think about it, and this was a question he posed to me, is Kansas City is a cardiac team. They every single week, you never know what's going to happen, and it always seems to come down to the end. And is it going to be something where they're going to get out of that? In some ways, you look at it and you're like, well, they should be able to beat this Raiders team. It shouldn't be close. It should be a 2-score game in the third and fourth quarter. That's what it should be. The reality is they are playing basically Super Bowl type games for every single team they play, every single time they step on the field. Panthers played out of their mind, played one of their best games that they have ever played against the Chiefs last week. The Raiders are going to do it. The Chargers are going to do it next week. It is a Super Bowl every week, and I only make that point because it changes how teams are going up against you. They're doing things that they don't normally do, and they're being more aggressive, knowing that they have to have a chance to win.
Yeah, there's no way around it. Everybody is going to give you their best punch, and we just see that continually. And if it's not going to be their best players, you got to watch out for the guys that are coming up behind them. If you look at the last game in particular, Max didn't record a sack that game either, but Tyree Wilson did, a guy that can't generally produce hardly at all, but was able, because of the matchup, to make the difference there. So I would love to say that he's not an X factor in this one either. I think he has 3 sacks on the year now that I look at it. But I got to tell you, after getting one of them against the Chiefs last time, I'm going to call him an X factor, because if they put all their effort into stopping Max, he's the guy that has to take up the slack most likely.
Yeah, and it's rough because you're sitting there and you're looking at these games, and every single time it's, okay, we stop this guy, somebody else is going to step up. And the thing that you look at in this game, I don't expect Aiden O'Connell to come out and maybe he's going to go throw the ball like he's never thrown the ball before just because he has to, like Bryce Young did last week. I still go back and look at that game. There were some throws I haven't seen a kid like that make in a very long time. But you go into this game and you know that you're going to get the best shot, and you just have to execute. You talked about it before break. The biggest thing that they have to do is they have to make sure they don't give them extra chances and they don't give them short fields. If they can control the ball and run the ball, and this is my biggest X factor, get the running backs 20 to 25 touches in this game. And I'm talking runs. I'm not talking passes. I'm talking straight runs. I think you take the will out of the defense of the Raiders in the fourth quarter, because they're not going to be able to keep up with this offensive line trying to stuff it down their throats on a regular basis. And the one thing that we didn't mention earlier that will play into this, that doesn't really go with the running the ball down their throats, is the Raiders are going to miss 2 of their top 3 cornerbacks that are out this game. So you would think that it would make more sense to pass, but I still think the run is the way to go in this one, because you want to wear the team down and you want to try to get it to where this isn't going to be something that they can have the energy to try to come back from late.
Yeah, and I know, folks, if you haven't heard who's going to be out, run it down for me, because Ja'Cory Bennett is one, I believe, that it will not play in this game. But did you get other information from Q that I don't know about?
Nate Hobbs is out.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah. So their second and third corners are out this week.
Now, those guys are going to be important, as they always are. When your 2 and 3 are out, you have to rely on somebody else. Well, Richardson, as well as Jack Jones, who's been pretty lauded over the years, both struggled a bit last week, giving up, I think, over 50 yards apiece, over 70% completion percentage. They are there to be attacked. Now, I think you have the safety Morgan in the middle, who's been playing pretty well lately, so know where he's at. But I do think in the past game, despite everything that you said and balancing against the run volume, if you're going to attack, I think it's got to be the outside corners with some of your bigger, faster wide receivers. And I do like that matchup for them.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious to see how it turns out. I do think that Kansas City's got to also, while I say they do need to run the ball, and I do think they do, I think they also need to continue to try to feed Worthy and try to get him more involved and get him going, because you're going to need him in the playoffs, regardless of if you get Hollywood Brown back later this season, which I do think is going to be a big deal for the Chiefs. Losing Hendershot, I don't know that you're going to end up bringing in another tight end, and Kansas City has been very, very active in using a 3 tight end set. And while that doesn't seem like that's going to be that big of a deal, I think it is going to be a big deal for this team because they are taking advantage of matchups. And Hendershot, or whether it was Jody Fortson before him, Wiley didn't really do much, but Jody Fortson and Hendershot both took advantage, at least at times, of the coverages that they got and made plays. Not being able to have that is going to change what they're going to do on offense. So to me, your X factor still needs to be getting your wide receivers involved, namely Xavier Worthy. I think that DeAndre Hopkins has shown that he knows exactly what he needs to in this offense. And while we may want to see him have more snaps, I also think that they're kind of looking at it and saying, maybe we don't need to get him as many snaps. One, because of the draft pick compensation. So don't forget that. Two, as long as they're winning, they don't really have to get him super involved right now, and it's a better chance to keep him healthy for the playoffs, which is really what they're going to care about.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Juju Smith-Schuster, I believe, had a couple of catches against the Raiders that were helpful, so I think you can go that way. Baylor Cupp was restored to the practice squad. He was on the practice squad injured list prior to that the other day, and they do have Anthony Firkser, right? And we always forget about him because he's been kind of around the league. I believe he's got, 6 years of experience. So if you really feel that you need to get back to 13, I think you have a couple of options there. So maybe we see that one of them get elevated so that they can go back to it. But I think at the end of the day, it's about making sure that you are executing and attacking where that weakness is in specific timing. I think what you saw on that drive, certainly against the Bills when they tried to have it and were able to execute, I think you saw the urgency there. I think you saw quicker step, 3 and 5 step drops, getting the ball out, understanding how to attack, not just quickly, but in areas that allow you to maybe develop some yak. I think they have to go back to that. And I would like to see that start in the first quarter, maybe in the first 15, and get to the point where they can build a lead, because I think that's going to be important for them. At the end of the day, I think that's exactly what happens. They are able to come out, run the ball some, hopefully a little bit with Pacheco. I agree. Maybe Clyde, maybe Carson. Who knows? If you need an extra tight end, you're not going to bring somebody up. Carson could be a guy that can at least fill in a little bit on some of the wing duties, those things. And I did like the full backfield last week. I think at the end of the day, this is not a repeat of last Christmas. I don't think the Chiefs will allow the Raiders to put themselves in that position. I don't know that they go all out. I can't say that it's going to be a 30-point game, but I do see them being more stoic and more appreciative of the fact that Max and company can hurt them. I see this game going down about 27-17.
I'll give you mine in just a second, but I have to ask the question because this is actually something I thought of on the crossover too. Would you take a loss tomorrow if it guaranteed a three-peat? I mean,
sure.
Yeah.
Yep, done.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what it comes down to is like, if we could say they're going to win the Super Bowl because they lose to the Raiders, I'll take the loss, whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Reality is we can't say that, obviously, but last time they lost to the Raiders, they didn't lose again for quite a while. And so I don't, well,
or
yeah,
week before last, sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, they went 16 games without losing, and that's just about unheard of in the NFL. So, I'm not saying that's going to happen the second time around, but reality is the Chiefs are better than this Raiders team. You look across the board, the Raiders have maybe obviously they have a better defensive end situation. I don't think anybody would argue that. But maybe that's the only real position group that I think the Raiders probably are better than the Chiefs are, is maybe defensive end. You obviously have Patrick Mahomes, which is going to be ages above Aiden O'Connell. I mean, it's not even close. So to me, you have the best player in the world versus a guy that's, I don't even know really deserves to be a starter. So it shouldn't be close, but it's the Chiefs. And they always seem to find a way to keep the game closer than it should be. I think that Kansas City is probably going to jump out to a lead. I think that they're probably going to control it, kind of like they did against Carolina. But I do think that they're going to let the Raiders get back into it late. I don't think it's going to be something where they have to be close to overtime, but I do think they get it close to a one-score game. So I'm going to go 28 to 20 Kansas City.
Okay. We'd love to know what you think. How does this game go the day after Christmas? I know people will be shopping, not Chiefs fans, but what do you think? Put it in the comments down
Day
below
after
on
Thanksgiving.
YouTube. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Hey, now it's in my head. That's just the way that it goes. So leave us a prediction and let us know what you think. Hope everybody is having a great Thanksgiving day. Enjoy yourselves and be ready for this game. We'll be live post game as we usually are. We'll see Matt and Derek. So thank you very much. We appreciate you and everything that you guys do, listening, watching every day, every week, year after year. Couldn't do without you. Have a great holiday, and we'll talk to you post game.